I decided to take a trip to a cabin in the mountains, hoping to escape the noise of the city. The cabin was by a quiet lake, surrounded by dense pine trees. I planned to spend a few days there, relaxing and enjoying the solitude. On the first day, everything felt perfect. I was far from the stress of work, and I savored the peace by the lake. As the evening approached, I made a simple dinner, lit the fireplace, and settled down with a book. Occasionally, a cold breeze swept past the window, but I felt unusually comfortable. Once it got completely dark, I started hearing strange noises outside the cabin. At first, I thought it was just the wind rustling through the leaves, but the sound was deeper, almost like whispering or something tapping gently against the window. I got up and went to the window, peering through the glass, but saw nothing, only darkness. I told myself it was just the natural sounds of the forest at night and sat back down by the fireplace. However, the noise didn't stop. In fact, it became more frequent and urgent. I tried to ignore it, but a sense of unease grew stronger inside me. Finally, I stood up and decided to go outside and check. When I opened the door, a cold wind rushed in, and everything outside was silent. The leaves rustled softly in the gentle breeze. I walked to the front of the cabin and looked around, but saw nothing. Just as I was about to head back inside, I noticed a set of footprints on the ground in front of the door. Footprints that didn't belong to me. The prints looked like they were made by bare feet, coming from the depths of the forest. They circled around the cabin and then disappeared near the front door I had just opened. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold night air, but from a deep, bone-chilling fear. My heart started to race, and I hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. Back in the cabin, I sat by the fireplace, trying to calm myself down, convincing myself that it was just the marks of some lost hiker. But the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. I checked all the windows and doors, making sure they were locked, and decided to go to bed, hoping to forget the strange occurrence. But shortly after I lay down, the noises came back. This time they were clearer and more urgent, as if they were just outside the walls of the cabin. I held my breath and listened carefully. The sounds were like fingernails softly scratching against wood, sometimes interspersed with a faint whisper, like a group of people murmuring in low voices. I sat up, hearing the sounds coming from the far side of the cabin. I grabbed a flashlight, trying not to make any noise, and slowly moved toward the source of the sound. Suddenly, the noises stopped. I stood in the darkness, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. The cabin was silent, except for my own breathing. Just as I was about to turn back toward the bed, I heard a slight movement above my head. It sounded like something moving on the ceiling. I pointed the flashlight upward, slowly casting the beam of light. I saw a small hatch in the ceiling, an attic door that seemed to be moving slightly, as if something was pushing it open from above. I held my breath, staring at the hatch as it slowly creaked open. In the darkness, I could make out a single eye, a stranger's eye, staring directly down at me. For a moment, I was completely frozen with fear. The owner of the eye seemed to realize I had seen them, and suddenly the eye vanished, and the hatch door slammed shut. I heard a scurrying noise, like something quickly crawling in the attic. I bolted to the door, yanked it open, and ran outside. The cold night air hit my face as I stood there, too terrified to look back at the window. I felt as if countless unseen eyes were watching me from the dark. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, trying to call the police, but there was no signal. I decided to run to the nearby town for help. As I hurried along the path, I felt something in the forest following me. My pace quickened until I was nearly sprinting, finally bursting into the only convenience store still lit up in the small town. I told the store clerk what I had experienced. She listened with a serious expression and then told me, "That cabin has been abandoned for years. The family that used to live there disappeared, and only their footprints were ever found in the snow." Hearing this, a chill ran through my body, and I didn't dare stay in that town for another moment. Early the next morning, I drove away from that eerie forest and never looked back. To this day, I still can't explain what happened that night. But whenever I close my eyes, I can still see that eye staring back at me. My wife and I decided to rent a small beach house for the weekend. It was meant to be a romantic getaway, a chance to leave the city behind and enjoy the sound of waves and the warmth of the sun. The house was quaint, with a cozy living room, a small kitchen, and a bedroom with a large window that looked out over the ocean. We arrived in the late afternoon, settled in, and then decided to take a walk along the shore. The sky was painted with the soft pink and orange hues of sunset as we walked, talking about everything and nothing. By the time we headed back to the house, the sun had set and a cool breeze had started to blow in from the sea. As we approached, I noticed something strange. The front door was slightly ajar. I frowned and looked at my wife. "Did we leave it open?" I asked. She shook her head, looking just as puzzled as I was. I felt a slight twinge of worry but brushed it off. Maybe we hadn't closed it properly when we left. I pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside, flicking on the light switch. The living room looked just as we had left it. Our bags by the sofa, a couple of magazines spread out on the coffee table. "Maybe it was the wind," I said, though the air felt still. We tried to shrug it off and went about our evening. We had dinner, shared a bottle of wine, and played some music on a small Bluetooth speaker we'd brought with us. For a while, everything felt normal again, and I almost forgot about the door. But as the night went on, I started feeling uneasy. There was something about the house, a heaviness in the air, an inexplicable chill that seemed to seep through the walls. Around midnight, we decided to head to bed. My wife fell asleep quickly, but I lay there, listening to the rhythmic sound of the waves outside the window. I must have drifted off at some point, but I was suddenly jolted awake by a noise downstairs, a faint, creaking sound, like a floorboard gently bending under weight. I listened for a moment, heart pounding. There it was again, a slow, deliberate creak, like someone moving carefully across the wooden floor. I turned my head to my wife. She was still asleep, breathing deeply. I carefully slid out of bed, trying not to make any noise, and reached for my phone to use as a flashlight. I made my way to the top of the stairs, listening. The house was silent again, except for the whispering wind and the distant waves. I took a deep breath and started down the stairs, step by step, moving slowly to avoid any noise. As I reached the bottom, I paused. The living room light was off, but I could still make out the shapes of the furniture in the dim light filtering in from the window. I scanned the room, trying to see if anything was out of place, but everything looked the same. I was about to turn around and head back up when I heard it. Another faint creak, this time from the kitchen. I felt a chill run down my spine as I walked toward the kitchen, the faint glow of my phone guiding me. The kitchen was small, with a single window facing the dark beach outside. I stood at the doorway, listening, holding my breath. Nothing. I reached out and flicked on the light switch. The light flickered for a moment before coming on, illuminating the small room. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The back door, the one that led to the deck outside, was slightly open. I distinctly remembered locking it earlier. I felt a surge of anxiety and moved quickly to shut it, making sure the latch clicked securely into place. I glanced outside, but the deck was empty, the beach beyond covered in shadows. As I turned back, I heard a faint sound behind me, a soft tapping, like fingers drumming against wood. My breath caught in my throat. The sound was coming from the living room now. I stepped back, peering around the corner, and saw nothing but darkness. Then the tapping stopped. I felt a growing sense of dread. I decided to wake my wife. I turned and rushed back up the stairs, my footsteps suddenly loud in the silent house. As I reached the bedroom, I saw her sitting up, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Before I could answer, we both heard it, a slow, deliberate knock on the bedroom door. 3 knocks, steady and firm. My heart was in my throat. The door was closed, and we hadn't heard anyone come up the stairs. I motioned for my wife to stay quiet, and I moved toward the door, holding my breath. I put my ear against the wood, trying to hear any movement on the other side, but it was silent. I whispered through the door, "Who's there?" No response. Just the sound of the waves crashing against the shore outside. I reached for the handle, hesitated for a moment, then slowly turned it, pulling the door open. The hallway was empty. I exhaled in relief, but the feeling was short-lived. Just as I stepped back, I heard the front door downstairs creak open again, slowly, as if someone had just left. I rushed back down the stairs and found the front door swinging gently on its hinges. I looked out into the darkness, but there was no one there, just the empty beach and the moonlit waves. My heart raced as I closed the door and locked it tight. We spent the rest of the night awake, sitting on the bed with the light on, listening for any more sounds. But there was nothing. No more knocks, no more creaking floors. The next morning, we packed up and left as soon as the sun came up. We never found out who or what had come into our beach house that night. But I'll never forget those knocks on the bedroom door, or the feeling that we were not alone. It started like any other quiet evening. I had finished dinner, curled up on the couch with my favorite blanket, and was about to settle into a new book when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it absent-mindedly, assuming it was a notification from some app. But it was a text message from an unknown number. "Where are you?" it read. I frowned, thinking it must be some wrong number. I ignored it and returned to my book. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. I'm outside. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I looked around my living room, half expecting to see someone staring through my windows, but there was nothing, just the quiet of my empty street, faintly lit by the street lamp outside. I typed a quick reply, "Who is this?" and hit send. I waited, my heart beating a little faster. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed again. "Why aren't you opening the door?" I froze. I hadn't heard a doorbell, no knock, nothing. My mind raced. I decided to check. I walked to the front door and peered through the peephole, half expecting to see someone standing there, but there was no one. I glanced back at my phone, feeling more annoyed than afraid. "Stop this. You have the wrong number," I typed. I hit send, and for a moment, I thought that would be the end of it. But then another message came. "I know you're alone. Open the door." My heart began to pound harder. I checked the peephole again. Still, no one was there. I quickly moved to the windows, carefully peeking through the curtains, but the street outside was empty, just the shadows dancing under the dim streetlights. I returned to the living room, feeling the walls closing in on me. Maybe it was a prank, I thought, some kids trying to scare me. But then my phone lit up again. "I can see you." That message stopped me cold. I glanced around, as if expecting the walls to reveal some hidden observer. I slowly walked over to the windows again, checking each one more carefully this time. The neighborhood was quiet, my street deserted. I even checked the back door, locked as I had left it. I felt an unsettling mix of fear and frustration building up. I typed another message, "Who are you? Leave me alone." I hesitated for a moment and added, "I'm calling the police." Then I hit send. A few seconds passed and then my phone buzzed again. "You shouldn't have said that." At that moment, I realized that my hands were trembling. I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe it was all just some elaborate joke, but there was a creeping sense of dread that wouldn't go away. The texts were too specific, too direct. I tried to calm myself, thinking about what to do next. Should I really call the police? What if it was just some mistake? Just as I was about to make a decision, another message came. "Check your back door." A chill swept over me. I felt my mouth go dry. Slowly, I made my way toward the kitchen, where the back door was. I flicked on the lights and immediately noticed something that made my stomach drop. The door handle was slowly turning. I rushed over, locking the deadbolt. Whoever was on the other side must have heard me because the handle stopped moving, and the kitchen fell into an eerie silence. I stood there, my breath shallow, staring at the door, half expecting it to burst open at any moment. My phone buzzed again. That wasn't very nice. I was shaking now, fear gripping me tightly. I didn't reply this time. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and backed away slowly, trying to think clearly. Should I call the police now? As I moved, I heard a soft tap against the glass of the back door window. I turned to look, but all I saw was my own reflection, pale and wide-eyed in the dim light. My phone vibrated again, the screen lighting up the dark kitchen. "Look outside." I didn't want to. Every instinct in me screamed not to, but I couldn't help myself. I slowly approached the window, peeking through the blinds. The backyard was dark and empty, with only the faint outlines of trees swaying in the wind. But then I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the yard, barely visible in the shadows. They were motionless, facing my direction. I gasped and stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The figure didn't move. My phone buzzed again, and I almost dropped it in panic. "I see you." I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. The operator picked up, and I quickly explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady. They told me to stay calm and that a patrol car would be there soon. I hung up, keeping my eyes on the window. The figure was gone. My heart was racing. I tried to keep my breathing steady, telling myself help was on the way. I backed away from the window, keeping my eyes on it, and moved toward the front of the house. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. "Why did you call them? You think they'll get here in time?" I felt a cold sweat on my forehead. How did they know I had called the police? Panic rose in my chest. I looked out the front window, hoping to see the patrol car coming down the street, but the road was empty. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then finally I saw headlights. Relief washed over me as the police car pulled up outside. 2 officers got out, looking around cautiously. I rushed to the front door and opened it, waving them over. Just as they reached my porch, my phone buzzed one last time. I glanced down at it. "You got lucky this time, but I'll be back." The officers searched the property and the surrounding area but found nothing. No sign of anyone, no footprints, no trace of a visitor. They told me it was probably just a prank, some sick joke, but they stayed for a while just to make sure everything was safe. Eventually, they left, and I was alone again. I didn't sleep at all that night. Even now, weeks later, I still can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. I never found out who was sending those texts, but I keep my doors locked and double-check my windows every night, and I never ignore a text from an unknown number anymore. That's today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.